Nick, Andy, we need to talk about something, and that is Gregg Berhalter's US men's national team future. Obviously, been a bit of an up and down week for him, getting hammered by Colombia in that pre-Copa America tournament friendly, 5-1 defeat, a lot of question marks about his future. But then a good bounce back performance from the US, drawing 1-0 against Brazil, could have easily won the game. A lot of people then praising Berhalter. Nick, where are we at with Gregg Berhalter? Because the vibes were not good. Now they're a bit better, but it could quickly go the other way again, right? Depending on what happens in the opening few games of Copa America this summer. So this seems now we've reached sort of the pivotal time for Berhalter and where we're going to be with him for the US men's national team future.
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I don't adore him as a coach or anything like that. So I don't want him out either. I want the U.S. men's national team to succeed, and the reason I don't want him out is largely because the players are in his corner. They backed him for this. I think the men's national team, unlike a lot of maybe not unlike Joe, you tell us, but look, it's closer to the NBA than anything else. If the players like you and they're going to show up for you, that matters. They're all saying the right things after the game against Brazil. Matt Turner talking about what it means to pull on the shirt, what it means to play for the crest. There's buy-in there. There's been discipline against, against stars, against Weston McKennie, against Serginho Dest, and to a certain extent, obviously, whether you agree with it or not, against Gio Reyna. And so I think there's a platform there where I think they're relatively safe. That said, I want my national team to be at least on the levels with going into a game against a CONMEBOL power and expecting that they can get something out of it. And really, until the other night, I didn't know if we would see that. Until the Brazil game, I had not seen that. His record is and part of this is down to the Nations League reformatting. They don't get to play great teams anymore. They have to hope their showcase games are against Mexico. And so they should beat Bolivia. They should beat Panama. They will probably lose to Uruguay. And then we're looking at a knockout round game. And if it goes worse than that, then yes, we need to assess his future, because the U.S. should be at a point where they win those two games, get out of the group, and we're judging him in a knockout round game. And I don't think the last one went well at the World Cup.
It's true, right, Andy? I mean, we're 5 years into Berhalter ball for the US and yet to beat any of the big nations. And Nick said it's not maybe his fault, because the way the qualifying, even some of the friendlies during the COVID period, they didn't have many options to play against these big European nations or South American nations, just the way the schedule is lined up. But this is the litmus test. This is it, this summer, where you really get to see if they've improved from the World Cup in Qatar, where they were handled pretty comfortably by the Netherlands in the last 16. And I think the criticism maybe was a bit over the top for the Colombia performance. Obviously, he blamed the players a little bit, the defensive mistakes, the lack of pressing. I don't know who we really want to blame for that. But this is kind of go time for Gregg Berhalter and his future. Is that fair to say? Because Nick mentioned it there. If you don't get out of the group, then he's not going to be the US men's national team beyond the start of July.
Yep, it is go time. It is time to assess Gregg Berhalter's performance this summer. This is what we have said all along. This was the timeline, because we are looking at the next World Cup, and this is the mile marker at the halfway point. And so all of the hysterics and the Berhalter in and the Berhalter out stuff doesn't matter at this point. It only matters what happens on the field over the course of the next month or so. And I feel good about it, and I'll tell you why. It's something that you mentioned there, Joe. He put the blame on the players for the Colombia game. And what happened after that? The players responded. He has that locker room clearly still. If he puts the blame publicly on the players the way that he did after that game, and they felt that Gregg didn't put us in the best system, or he didn't have us prepared, they don't respond the way that they did against Brazil. They don't put in maybe the best performance under Gregg Berhalter against the team that we just talked about this week, about being maybe one of the two favorites for Copa America this summer, and just being, embarrassingly rich with talent. And so I look at that, and it's for a lot of people, I can understand it's very difficult to take. Maybe we saw the worst performance that the U.S. could put forward and the best performance they could put forward back to back, 3 or 4 days apart. And so the extreme of those two things, it just shows what's possible, I think, with this group. They can play incredibly badly and lose to anybody in the world, but they can also, when they have, and I think it was a belief, I think it was confidence, and I think it was just a willingness to go at Brazil and take chances playing against one of the best teams in the world. And I don't mean to score chances, I mean to throw numbers forward on the counterattack, to get forward 4, 5, 6 players forward and put Brazil under pressure. And that, to me, was the thing that was most striking in that game. There were moments Brazil were scrambling to get back defensively against the U.S., and the U.S. did that to them. And so they showed what they can do. We now need this to become the minimum expectation every single game, and that's the thing I'm looking for from Gregg and from this team at Copa America.
Yeah, it was like sort of the England game at the World Cup last time, the 0-0 draw. Obviously, it did that to them as well. Like, maintained a good defensive, solid structure, were very good on the counter attack and caused England lots of problems. So there has been those couple of performances now, Nick, almost as a blueprint, and that to me is the most interesting thing from the Brazil game. That going into this Copa America tournament, you can replicate that, right? You're going to be under pressure in the group stage game against Uruguay, in the knockout rounds against the big boys. And they've shown a different style to what they usually do in the CONCACAF region, which is dominate possession, just have their way with any team that they're playing against and almost become bored at times. No, they need to be switched on and focused. And maybe the defeat to Colombia and the heavy nature of it wasn't the worst thing that could have happened to this group ahead of this tournament, because it's almost refocused them and, sharpened up some defensive things. So did we see a bit of a blueprint there in that Brazil game for how they can attack not only this tournament this summer and do well in it, but also the World Cup in 2 years' time, where they have to be a bit more humble and say, all right, we're not going to dominate the ball in every game that like Gregg likes us to, but we found a bit of a halfway house, if you know what I mean, between styles of play.
I do. The defending will have to be better, though.
Yes.
And again, it's Brazil. It's, again, conditional, asterisk, whatever. It's Brazil, Vinny Jr., Rodrigo. We just watched them win another Champions League. But I'm scared of them at the back. I know Matt Turner only made 1 error before he made 11 saves. But I think he's a fine goalkeeper. I don't think he is, and this is not an insult, but the Tim Howard, Casey Keller, Brad Friedel, back-to-back world stars goalkeeper. So, in 2026, if Tim Ream's playing, I love Tim Ream, but we're in trouble because he'll be closing in on 40. Chris Richards should be better, but is it him and Carter Vickers? Are they just entering their prime? So I think there have to be answers other than that, and those answers probably rely upon Tyler Adams being healthy, and Yunus Musa not being 19 years old. And that's probably what will stop them at this tournament. Is it's still young at some key pieces.
Which is why we've probably seen that up and down nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We have to still remember that, right? That is still a very young team, most of which we're watching together as a unit for 5, 6 years now, given what happened and not reaching the World Cup in 2014. But still, we want it now, right? We want the results now, and it doesn't always work like that in life, or especially in football in this situation. Andy, what is a successful tournament for Gregg Berhalter? I mean, obviously, we know a lot of luck comes into these situations, but most US fans will say, all right, we've got to reach the semifinals like we did in 2016 in the Copa America Centenario. And then, that would be a successful tournament for the US. Do you subscribe to that belief, or do you think it really doesn't matter what the US does, unless, of course, like we said, they get knocked out in the group stage, and then it's an entirely different discussion?
Yeah, if they're not out of the group stage, then we're having this conversation again a month from now about, well, what is Gregg Berhalter's USMNT future? So let's just, for exercise sake, say they get out of the group stage. You're coming up probably against either Brazil or Colombia in the first round of the knockouts, depending on whether you win the group or not. Nice little coincidence there, the fact that they've just played both of them and they have something to potentially learn from. Any result from knockout round, from the quarterfinals to the finals, is varying levels of acceptable, I think, from this group. It is about how they play in those games. It is about, do they try to win those games. If you lose to Brazil or Colombia or an Argentina because you are trying to win and not trying to not lose the way that we have done in a lot of big games, especially at major tournaments recently in the knockouts, then that is different to me. And that is, I think, another small, and I know that's not going to be enough progress quickly enough for a lot of people, but that's another small progression and mile marker in this program going forward and improving and believing that they can go on and do the things that people want them to do. It's one thing to say, we want to be in the semifinals of all the major tournaments, but to realistically be there, that you have to build up to that. And I think this is an opportunity for them to do that. They showed what they can be at their very best against Brazil, and I think that they can go toe-to-toe with any of these teams on any day. They can be beaten by any of them. They can beat any of them. Like, there are a wide range of possibilities for the U.S. at this tournament, and not all of them mean failure. Not all of them mean success. There's a little bit of all of that mixed into everything. We just need perspective. I get, and not to rant here, but we go through this every USMNT international window, and there's the hysteria and the hysterics, and it's just, none of it's helpful. None of it's productive. And so, while just like we want the players and then the coaches to be on the same page and pulling in the same direction together, maybe we can also do that as fans and onlookers of the U.S. men's national team as well.
Lovely message there, but Andy's also getting some nasty splinters from sat on that fence about where the US are going to reach in this tournament. Andy said, yeah, he said it doesn't matter, right? I mean, Nick, I mean, I'm thinking if they get to the quarterfinals and they lose to Colombia or Brazil and it's a good performance, that's fine. Yes. That doesn't change the trajectory of where they're heading as a team, right? So I think, and that's my prediction for the US. I think that's what's going to probably happen, be it extra time or a tight game, but they probably aren't there yet with Brazil or Colombia in their progression in a knockout tournament, by the way, which is different. And I still feel like they haven't got that experience in these kind of situations.
I'm not worried about the players, to be honest with you. I think they're going to reach the quarterfinal relatively easily. There might be a speed bump against Uruguay. I just need to feel better, to be closer to Andy's camp on the coach. I need one of those G's and Gregg to be growth. I need not telling one of your best players, but best talents before the tournament, you're probably not going to play much. I know this is the crowning glory of your, like, that's a mistake that happens. I need better than that. And I'm assuming that's not going to happen. I expect him to grow. I expect him to, we've seen Pep get cute in big games and get, turned into a villain for it. Don't start Jesus Ferreira after not playing him for a minute in a knockout round game against the Netherlands. Put your best team out there. Stop being cute. Stop thinking you're above this because you read a leadership book. And that's not to say that's Gregg. That's a lot of coaches. So I want to see growth. This is his second biggest stage, and I think we will see it. I don't necessarily love him, but I think we're going to see a growing coach. Someone who was faced with his entire career looking stupid, which would have been unfair based on one incident, and has seen himself fitting into it. And I don't mean stupid like he made this horrible. I mean, it got nutty and gross and we all hated it. I think that was just a moment for growth. I think we've seen it from him at every step, and it doesn't matter if you don't like him. We're probably going to see it this summer. We're probably going to feel better about the World Cup. And that's why I said quarterfinals here, almost regardless of what happens. It's Brazil or Colombia. Cool. But then anything below that, then we probably have to have a talk.
I think you're right, because I think there just hasn't, like we said before, been enough experiences against the elite top level teams for this young US team in the last 5 years since Berhalter's been in charge. So this is the most exciting, interesting, nerve-wracking, I think, few weeks for all US fans to see. All right, we've talked a lot about the potential of the golden generation, the talent of these players, but as a team, as a unit, how do they stack up against the best in the world 2 years out from the World Cup? And we're about to find out. So let's wait and see what happens. So a big summer for the US men's national team, and especially for Gregg Berhalter. Head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com. We'll keep you updated of all the latest from the US in Copa America. It's going to be a big tournament, and let's see how they get on.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.